Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Wise Build Bridges. The Wise Build Bridges is a podcast by Viaduct Generation, a mission-led SEO agency. My name is Duray, the South African SEO, and The Wise Build Bridges is a podcast dedicated to highlighting and spotlighting marketeers who are building something with real purpose. We believe that in uncertain times, the wise build bridges. They share ideas, build connections, and help others. And today I am joined by Yasmin Wilkinson, who is on a mission to help others. Yasmin, how are you? And thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Hi, Jerry. I am really good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Yasmin, we're going to get right into it. Tell us about what you are building at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess my job title per se is career alignment strategist. But essentially what that means is I teach overwhelmed marketers and I guess more widely professionals who've hit a wall, whether that's emotionally, energetically or professionally, how to sort of realign their work with their true values, because I think a lot of us don't realize that our values, you have your core internal values, but our values actually can change through our careers and through life, depending on lots of external factors as well. So it's really easy to get caught up in kind of the fast pace, especially in the marketing world, and kind of not have your work aligned with those values as you go through your career. So I'm building North Code, and that's my sort of self-discovery system. It uses values discovery, reflection, and career alignment strategy to help people get back aligned with their values and enjoy work again, really is what it's all about. For me, that comes from my own experience with burnout last year. So I was a marketing manager in a really busy marketing and sales agency, but I was working more on the in-house marketing. So yeah, riddle me that. It was a bit of a mad one. And I'd worked there for a good sort of four, almost 5 years. And I absolutely loved working there. It was really fast paced. We had lots of big tech companies as clients. And it was really interesting. And I really believed in the business, hence why I moved to do their in-house marketing as well. I was building a team from the ground up, so that was always hectic, going from one, i.e. just me, to then a team of sort of 5 or 6 of us. And I learned a lot of lessons doing that. I think in that time as well, I also, a few years ago, got my sort of ADHD diagnosis, which was pretty life-changing for many reasons, but it was a really positive thing to sort of have that validation and get some clues and answers as to things that I'd sort of questioned for such a long time and had definitely impacted my work. And I think that was one of the driving reasons to go and get diagnosed, just because I was starting to really struggle with my concentration and things like that, especially which I noticed during work. So lots of things going on, lots of internal factors that I definitely would love to sort of share more about and dive into. But essentially I got to the point where my work wasn't aligned with how I felt inside. And I was letting a lot of self-limiting beliefs really paralyze me and keep me kind of stuck. And it was those self-limiting beliefs were driven by fear. So they were really sort of stopping me and preventing me and paralyzing me from making the changes that I needed to do. And I was kind of just convincing myself that everything was fine. And if I just did more of this or a bit more of that, then I'd feel better tomorrow. And the thing is when you do that for too long, that's when you hit burnout eventually. Now, I think what I love to do is help people through my online mentoring at the moment. And then, as I said, I'm building North Code, which is going to be a bit more of a self-led digital system to help you identify those thoughts and fears and all those internal narratives that could be keeping you stuck or keeping you in a position where you're just not enjoying your work anymore. So yeah, the goal is all about, I guess, helping anyone who's either approaching burnout or recovering from burnout to stop living in that survival mode and stop kind of surviving the day to day and just getting through to 5, 6 o'clock. And oftentimes it's like 9, 10 o'clock, and just start feeling really good about their career again and their work again.
That's really amazing, Yasmin. Thanks so much for that. I think what I understand from that is that there are a number of marketing professionals that are constantly feeling the pressure to stay abreast with a number of things that are changing in the ever-changing world of marketing, as ChatGPT likes to mention so often. But what are some advice that you can offer based on your experience, based on your knowledge, in terms of noticing when you may be feeling those elements of burnout? what advice could you give to those people who ultimately have so much responsibilities that they do have to kind of almost be in the career that otherwise doesn't suit them that well, but they kind of have to, they haven't got the opportunity to make a quick switch? What are some things that you can offer to help them manage burnout better?
Yeah, so I think it's like you say, it's not about necessarily helping someone just overturn their whole life and completely turn things upside down and make a change and that sort of thing. But I think it's a really, really relevant and common, I guess, problem and issue that's going on in the world of marketing. There's such a high rate of that marketing burnout happening. Like you say, there's various reasons for it. Actually, had a look at a survey from Marketing Week and that was done earlier this year, and it said 80% of marketers have experienced imposter syndrome, 60% feel overwhelmed, and over 50% of them felt emotionally exhausted. I mean, those numbers kind of say it all, right? Like that's huge. So it's definitely a problem, and it's not a trend, something that people are jumping on and everyone's putting in their 2 cents, but it's a really real issue. And I think it can be very easy to blame external factors. So things like, I don't have enough budget, or we've got like 10 new clients to onboard and I don't have enough hands on deck to help me get through this, or we don't have the right skills in place in the team and we can't get that in quick enough. So it's really easy to blame those things. But for me, it was a deeply internal issue. Like, it was a very much a personal internal thing, but I guess it was exacerbated by some of those external things. So my advice would be is to think about the internal and not to necessarily look straight away to the external, which, no judgment, is the easiest thing to do because that's the day-to-day survival mode that you're in, and those are the things that are, I guess, triggering that stress for you. But really, usually very much more so an internal issue. And if you can start there, then and start looking at that a bit more closely, then things really start to change for you on the external as well. So for me, burnout was a result of, I guess, ignoring those internal things for way too long. And I would say most of the time it's not necessarily like what's holding us back from making those changes or trying to navigate this in a way that we can avoid that burnout or come back from it. It's not that you have like a lack of ambition that's keeping you stuck. It's that you've got mindset that you've usually like quietly, almost like not even realize that you're absorbing over a long period of time. And a lot of beliefs in these mindsets are built throughout your whole life, in fact, and they kind of build and they change over time, and you just apply them to the situation that you're in, especially at work. So you don't really think to question them. But yeah, I think over time that kind of leaves us stuck in roles that don't reflect who we truly are. An example I guess I can give you of that would be, for me, something that held me back for a long time was a fear of being seen. So obviously coming on a podcast today is something that I'm doing to really help overcome that. And the more opportunities I take like this, the more I go towards them, they get less and less scary. So and much more and more exciting, which is really great. I think right in the beginning, when I was too afraid to do things like that, in the context of perhaps doing my role in marketing, it was very much, I'm scared to get up in front of the board and present this strategy because I'm afraid that they are going to pick me apart and I'm going to be judged, and all those things. And that there's loads of other situations I guess you can apply that to. It's not necessarily just going on podcasts, but it could be doing social media marketing, whatever it might be. But it really started to break down my confidence and my own abilities after a while, because what I realised was staying invisible wasn't actually protecting me at all. What it was doing was it was fueling all those other fears that I had that I was trying to ignore or avoid looking at too closely, such as fear of failure. So back to the board meeting example, the board presentation, I was scared to present my strategy. Didn't want to be up on that stage. I thought people were going to judge me. They were going to think I didn't know what I was talking about, or I'm underqualified for the role, just whatever it might be. But then there was also that fear of, well, imagine if none of that happens. What then if I put the strategy forward and it doesn't work? Like, what happens then? Am I going to lose my job? Like, what if it doesn't perform? What if the campaigns don't perform? What if the messaging doesn't land? There's so many different ways that core kind of fear and that mindset bleeds into other areas, and it just ends up paralyzing you. So yeah, burnout kind of happens when we don't see that internal issue and when we don't give ourselves the opportunity to reframe those mindsets. So I guess a tip to start looking at that stuff is just to be honest with yourself. Just be honest and say, yeah, there's probably an element of fear going on here. I probably have some mindsets that I don't even realize are impacting me on my day-to-day, and just be curious about it. Just be curious and start looking at that. Be really kind to yourself about it. And maybe, you don't have to say jump on it and go on a podcast the next day, but start small. Start really small. Like have a conversation with someone that you've been kind of dreading, or, put some notes together about what you want to talk to that person about. Like start really small, and that little bit of action will get you to the next step.
So let me try and summarize that in an eloquent manner, because there's so many interesting bits there. But would you say then, or would you agree that developing your own self-awareness allows for you to appreciate and that self-discovery process allows for you to really resonate with your inner core values, which can then make sure that your job or your career is currently aligned to those core values? So to avoid burnout, having and improving your self-awareness is a key aspect. Is that right? Yes or no?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think it's all
Nice.
about well done. Sorry, I definitely was kind of just rolling with it there. I love talking about this stuff, so I just keep going and going. But no, great summary. I think that's the key, is that self-awareness. And if you don't have that self-awareness, it's start with that self-discovery. And just like I said, that honesty around, there's definitely some stuff going on there that I know is challenging me, and I've been afraid to look at it, and then just start being a bit curious about it.
So I've been writing a journal once every 2 weeks for the last 8 years, and it's great because I look at things, and 3 years ago that I was like, oh my god, I was so worried about that. Can you believe it? That's crazy, because I've got way bigger things to worry about now. Let me write about them. And then 3 years later or 2 years later, I go, no, I was worried about that. I was starting a podcast. How crazy is that? I'm now doing this. You know what I mean? So it's always quite interesting to look back and look at what are the big priorities. But I do feel that once I'm able to write it down, it's off my shoulders a little bit. Sometimes my mind is like, gotta do this, gotta do that. And I have a notepad next to my bed, and I just write send invoices or update HubSpot or whatever it is, and that just makes my mind go, okay, we'll talk about that tomorrow then. And that's really helpful for me. But can you give some other tips in terms of how people can develop that self-awareness to build up their kind of armory to fight burnout?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I absolutely love your strategy and kind of what you do to really help with that. And I think a lot of this is tied to, a lot of it, it's all it all sounds like it's mental, but a lot of it is tied to our emotional and our physical as well. So a lot of it is tied to our nervous system. I won't go too much into that. That's a whole nother realm that I'm still learning so much about that side of things. But what I would say is it's about creating a safe space for yourself. So what you said there with the journaling would probably be one of my top tips, is start writing it somewhere, because that's safe. That's just you putting your thoughts down. And also, don't judge yourself. Just be really kind to yourself as well. And think about it as if it's a younger version of you, perhaps, that's written that down. If it was you 2 years ago or something, and think, would you be mean to them? Would you judge them about that? Would you say, oh, you shouldn't be worried about that, or you're going crazy, just don't even think about that. That shouldn't be something that's concerning you? Or would you be mean to yourself about it? No, you wouldn't. I think most people will find they absolutely wouldn't. And I think that's a really helpful tip, is to kind of get those thoughts down if you can, in a way. And it's that first step of, I guess, being curious and figuring out a way that helps you explore it without feeling like you are gonna, at the same time as offloading, I guess, instead of feeling like by exploring it, you're actually just opening the floodgates to loads more stress coming in. Because you're absolutely right, it can be really terrifying to put things down, but once you do, it is a weight off your shoulders. That it really does help. So I would definitely say journaling is a great option for facing that. And again, if you have people around you, perhaps a great manager or someone on your team that you feel like you can talk to about this stuff, I would say do that. Obviously, always be careful, because you don't want to go in I hate my work. But I think if you're at the point where you are understanding, or you're ready to kind of be honest about, okay, it's not just the external factors, that start looking at some internal factors. Talk to someone at work or a friend, because I can guarantee they've probably experienced something similar. There's not many sort of safe spaces or communities to really air out those challenges and grievances, because people hold a lot of shame, and that's why they keep them as fears and why they keep them as those self-limiting beliefs. But yeah, I think you'll find that lots of people have experienced the same, if not similar things, perhaps in a slightly different context, and that can be really helpful.
That's brilliant. Yasmin, thank you so much. That's really, really interesting. So there are a number of tips then and tactics that people can use to prevent burnout, to overcome burnout, and it's really awesome to hear what you're building at Northcode and some tips in terms of developing self-belief. But let's also talk about how others can make their job how they can be better at understanding themselves and understanding what they need, but also how they can be better at their jobs. You've got a fantastic marketing career, and now you're building a community and a system that's helping marketeers kind of stay true to themselves and helping them deliver the best out of their career. But let's dig into some of the kind of key marketing shifts that you're seeing at the moment. Is there something that all marketing managers that are listening to this podcast now should pay particular attention to over the next few months?
Yeah, I would say it's something that all marketing managers could really pay attention to at the moment is the rise of kind of realness and that authenticity piece. So this is a bit of a switch up from thinking about yourself and being authentic in yourself and your values and things like that at work. But when you're actually looking to the outside world, that's also being mirrored, I would say, in marketing, especially with brands. And authenticity, I'm finding, is the bridge that really connects brands to their audience. Brands are breaking the fourth wall on social media, especially a lot more, which I've noticed myself on TikTok and Instagram and things like that. They're really showing up where their people and their audiences already are. Examples of that I saw a story of I think it was a woman in America, and she'd had like a crazy manic Monday, and like you couldn't write it, all this stuff had gone wrong. And I think it was a load of cereal brands had commented, like they were in the comment section. And when I first started scrolling through, I go straight to the comments when I see a video, because I'm just interested to see what everyone's chatting about. So I'm still watching this video, and her story of this crazy Monday is still unfolding. And there's a load of like cereal breakfasty type brands in the comments, and they're just kind of like saying, "We got you, girl," or like giving her a bit of love kind of thing, but they're not really saying anything specific. And I thought, that's really random. Like, that doesn't make sense. But actually, as I got further to the end of the video, I realized it's actually strategic. And they were all kind of breakfasty cereal brands in that realm, and like a milk brand, I think. And I guess they were all kind of in there because the key part was if she'd maybe started her day with breakfast, she would have felt much more equipped to deal with a load of the stuff that had come towards her in her day, which was interesting. But yeah, I thought this is actually a strategic move here. And again, I thought on the surface, it just looks like the marketing team has got hold of the social logins and they're just kind of doing what they want on there, or like they're just being themselves instead of the brand. But again, as I looked and saw more of them and kind of put them together, I realized they actually all have quite distinct tone of voice, and it's their brand voice mixed with, I guess, their social media team's voice. So kind of that millennial or Gen Z perhaps esque type of comments and things. And I thought that's actually a really, really nice blend. And they're still distinct. They're still slightly different. They're not just all exactly the same, which I think is really important. And yeah, it just showed that they were relatable to that girl, like who was in a specific segment of their target audience. And they were going to her and just kind of going, "We're here, when you're ready, we can help you. So you might not need it right now, but feels like you might do soon." And so it just keeps them top of mind. And I thought that was actually super strategic. And yeah, instead of waiting for the audience to find a campaign, they're kind of showing up where their audience already is.
I love that. That's really, really interesting. Transparency and that kind of brand authenticity. You don't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be polished. It can be raw, it can be real. And I love that. I think that's really cool. And I love that term, the rise of realness. If I didn't call this the Wise Build Bridges, maybe I could call it the rise of realness. A brilliant like slogan, if you will. So, Yasmin, as you know, this podcast is kind of sponsored by Viaduct Generation. We are an SEO agency and therefore have a load of people listening to this podcast looking for tips on acquisition, SEO, kind of part of that acquisition family of marketing channels, if we will. And I wondered, did you have any tips that you can pass on to brands, maybe kind of touching on what you've spoken about just a moment ago, but any tips on marketing managers that want to improve their acquisition channels?
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of looping back to, I mean, for me, genuine connection trumps any sort of lead gen tactic or strategy or focus every day of the week. And I think going back to what we were just talking about there's some ways that brands are showing up more authentically, and they're building that connection in a couple of different ways. One part of that is I've noticed like founders are sharing more parts of their journey, especially on social media, and I think audiences are loving it, but they're showing the messy parts more. I think there's much less of fear around getting cancelled or having to, like you say, be polished and perfect, and they're really showing the behind the scenes look and the challenges and the struggles as well as the positives and the wins, which I think is so important. I actually noticed that, funnily enough, that I wanted to talk about this, and I noticed yesterday that you yourself have posted something on LinkedIn that was completely in line with that, which I thought was fantastic. So I know that you obviously, share in that, and then that might be part of your strategy, maybe intentionally. So yeah, it kind of shows, I guess, the young glamorous side of being a founder, which I thought was cool. But I also have a uni friend actually, and he has launched one of those sort of mushroom coffee businesses. And he was a friend at uni. He was like, I think we both worked in like doing promo and flyering at the nightclubs like nearby or whatever. So he was very much like a social friend, and I'd see him around and we'd say hi and stuff. And I started noticing that he was posting around 6 months ago about his business, and I'll give him a free plug here. His name's James, and his business is Balanced Coffee. And he recently started talking around the move from, I think, a powdered coffee to these liquid drops. And what I thought was really interesting about this strategy is I didn't need to read anything about why powdered mushroom coffee is, I don't know, not as great as liquid, and why that has more nutrients, because he was actually just sharing his behind the scenes context as a founder of the business. This is a literal avenue that he would have had to explore and learn about. And then he's sharing the decisions that he has quite literally made that has got him to the point where he's going to invest a load of money back into this and create and launch this new product. And I just thought, what great marketing, because you've sold me on it, because you're sharing authentically everything that you've learned about it, and you're sharing your thought process and your decision-making process around why you want to launch this product, all just from your LinkedIn post. And I think I must have only seen 3 maybe posts around this, and I was like, yep, sold. I definitely would think that's better than the powder. I'll sign me up, So I think it's that's a really great sort of tactic, especially with content to go through, and that there's nothing wrong with, for teams who perhaps have a CEO who is, there's a big, I guess, a lot of space between the two of you, or they're really busy, or they're overseas and it's hard to pin them down, whatever it might be. I don't think that there's anything wrong with marketing teams writing content for CEOs or outsourcing it to someone who can do that really well. But I think the key, if you are going to do that, is you need to get to know that person, whether it's your CEO, your CTO, whoever. Shouldn't be a CMO, they should definitely be writing their own posts. But if you have a founder or a CEO, whatever, who you want to write for, you need to get to know them. It could be as simple as go for a coffee with them and make sure that you're not allowed to talk about anything to do with work. It has to be all non-work topics. Go for a coffee, get to know them as a person, as an individual, pay attention to the way they speak about things, not just what they talk about, but how they talk about that. If you're not able to do that, create a personality quiz or find a free one online, or something that just gives you an insight into the type of person they are, so you can really sort of nail that unique voice for them. And then conduct weekly interviews would be the second thing. And the thing about that is, don't just do it with the CEO or the founder that you're writing for, do it with your customers too. So pick a customer each week and make sure that you speak to that customer first, or take the insights from the previous week, and that's what you want to feed straight up to your founder or CEO, and talk to them about that and get their insights. And that means that you are not only, I guess, connecting your customer, with the top end of your business, but you're getting that person's thoughts as well around how they can help them, and really seeing that kind of those live insights. And that's the kind of content that is going to be like, that people are going to be eating up on social media. So I would say those are the two things I would do if you're going to write on behalf of a CEO or founder. But certainly you can still do the second part if they're going to write for themselves, and help guide them with that for sure. So yeah, that's how you can find that unique voice instead of just copying and pasting like other founders' styles. So I think that's really important.
That's awesome. And thank you for checking out my LinkedIn profile and supporting me on that. I appreciate it. Sometimes I'm stuck between LinkedIn because I feel like I'm still climbing cringe mountain on that. And I feel like to be good at anything, you need to climb cringe mountain. I'm trying to get better at driving, because here, authenticity, right? I can't drive. I'm a 30-year-old man that can't drive because I went from South Africa, left over, and I've been in zone 1 of London for a while now. It's just, why on earth do you need to drive? But I want to learn to drive. It's like something I want to get better at, right? But every time I come from a driving lesson, I'm like more frustrated, because it's a reminder that I'm not Lewis Hamilton yet. And I'm like, like, it's so annoying to me. But I guess we can't be amazing at things straight away, right? We have to learn, and we have to get better, and we have to be okay with failure. And I think that's a big part about what you were touching on there previously, in that in order to succeed and in order to grow, we need to be okay with being bad at things first. And I think that kind of that approach of letting go of perfection is something that's come up actually amongst a number of the marketing managers and founders that I've interviewed on this podcast, is that perfection is the enemy of progress. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that 100%. Perfection is, I guess, definitely one of the things that holds me back. And to be honest with you, I battle with that every single day. At the moment, what that looks like is more so through, similar to you looking at those like social posts and battling cringe mountain, and I'm just launching this new brand, and I love things that are aesthetically pleasing. Like, I'm just very driven by that. I've got my Venus in Taurus for any astrologers out there. So that stuff, like, I like things that look really good and look really cohesive and all of that. So it's really difficult for me to, I guess, test new things, because they're all going to look slightly different. But that's the whole point of testing. And it's going to take me a little while to get to the point where my Instagram and, TikTok, whatever, look really together and they look, perfect. But if I did that now, I wouldn't be testing anything. I'd just be going with what I think is going to work. And that's kind of like the opposite of what we ever want to be doing in marketing. So I think, striving for perfection can really hold you back, and it can really actually feed that fear of failure or things going wrong, because you end up just delaying things or waiting for something to be perfect, and then actually get closer to those fears around something not performing well actually coming true, because you might have, getting closer to missing the moment or being last off the mark instead of first to the party. So that's a real kind of risk that you take with that. But I think the way to counteract it is just to act. And I don't say that lightly, because action is really scary, and it can be really scary, but it doesn't have to be huge. So just take small steps, like whatever it is that you're battling, whether it's like you need a campaign to be perfect, because before you go live with it, look at what that's actually tied to. Like, you're probably just terrified it's gonna do badly or whatever. So look, sorry, that was my dog. Shall I start again with that?
You want to get the bell?
I will do. 1 second. I'm so sorry.
No, get it. Go. All yours. Take your time.
So sorry about that.
You're fine. Talk about authenticity. There we go.
Honestly, that was so loud, and that parcel was meant to arrive tomorrow. But do you want me to roll back? I can't remember where.
Because I think the next question is quite interesting as well. So I'll leave that one to Ruth to cut it up. But hold on to what you were thinking, because I'm going to kind of move on to another question to kind of enable the podcast to move forward. Yasmin, what you're building here with North Code is absolutely amazing. And I think a lot of people in marketing could truly benefit from it. And I've seen a lot of people in my career in marketing thus far who struggle with a lot of the things that you're going to be supporting them with. Imposter syndrome, self-awareness, and making sure that they're kind of in a inner core values align with what they're trying to build. And if you can marry that up, it's super amazing. For some people out there, they aren't in that position where maybe they have a lot of responsibilities. They need to keep doing what they kind of are doing and what they've built. And sometimes it's in the less sexy stuff, right? Sometimes you're marketing SEO, which is often considered the kind of less sexy of the marketing channels. Everything else is kind of wrapped in gold, but SEO is kind of like, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. The ugly stepsister maybe of marketing. And that's a good example of maybe myself, who I'm trying to build visibility in a fairly crowded space, right? My uncle today can open up his laptop and decide that he is an SEO. So the market is saturated. Maybe not to SEO agencies, but to any marketeers who feel like they are building in quite a saturated and crowded space. What advice would you give to them that for those people who are trying to kind of build visibility in those crowded spaces?
Yeah, I think it's a really valid concern and question, because as you say, especially with the rise of like AI, it's not just you can Google anything and learn about things, but with AI as well, that has completely I guess really accelerated people's rate of learning, and a lot of people will kind of like claim to be the experts, or go, oh no, I can just handle this, or we'll just get AI to do it, or whatever it might be, and they think they can forego that quality. But I think so the market can get really saturated really quickly. And the key is, I guess, the key that we're always trying to do in marketing is to set ourselves apart from everyone else in the market. Whether, you know, you've got a super saturated market or it's really niche, I think you've still got to find your niche within that. So if you are struggling with that, I would say get more specific, even more specific. Because if it feels crowded, then you're probably still going way too broad with your messages and your targeting. You might be able to help everyone. Like, for example, with my business, I can help. It's not just marketers that I can help, but I have a marketing background and I've experienced that, so that's where I'm starting. You know, like that's where I'm really getting down to my niche now, because there's a really big problem with marketing burnout specifically. I'm sure there's lots of other industries as well where that is a rising concern, but that's my context and that's my experience. So I marry that together and I can narrow that down. And I think the key thing to point out is it's just a starting point. You don't have to stay in that niche forever. And you can also market to multiple niches at once. If you have the budget and the team and the ability to do that, that's how you can scale. But you've got to start more specific. And I think a lot of brands, I mean, I've done this myself in the past, back in the day, like you go broad because you think, I need as many people as possible to see what we're capable of doing, because I know we can help them. But the broader that message goes, the more diluted it becomes, and actually the quieter you become in that sea, in that market. So yeah, if it feels crowded, get more specific, I would say.
I think that's wonderful bits of advice. Niche down even further, get specific, and I guess as you niche down even further, you're allowed to speak that customer messaging, right? It's something that we've done at Viaduct. We were CEO for anyone with a budget, and we were trying to kind of support in any way we can. But it felt that without really focusing on, in this case, e-commerce, our messaging was quite wishy-washy, shall we say. But now really focusing on e-commerce and trying to understand the challenges that e-commerce businesses face, we get to understand return rate, AOV, LTV. Those people that are now within certain sectors within e-commerce know that, for example, in the restricted marketing sectors like vaping and things like that, Viaduct is one of the best in the world at that, if not the best in the world. And I think that's because we've niched down and we focused on e-commerce, and by chance different sectors within that kind of pop up, and now we're looking at a lot of our brands coming to us that are in the kind of home and furniture space, and we're like, hey, that's great. That lifetime value is pretty high, and that AOV, they're not buying a 20 quid unit all of a sudden, they're buying a 500 pound unit. All of a sudden my SEO retainer ROI is made up really quickly, right? Yeah, it is fun, and I think you're absolutely right there in terms of the niching down and getting specific. On that notion of getting specific, a lot of people listening to the Wise Build Bridges are CMOs, marketing directors, head of marketing, but we also have marketing assistants, people, students that want to get into marketing. And we'd like to take a moment of this podcast to recognize them and to give some advice to your younger self. If Yasmin today was talking to Yasmin of the start of Yasmin's career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
That is a great question. I would say stay curious, learn widely, and don't box yourself in too early. Unless, of course, there's like something you love doing, you're a designer and you like to design a specific way. Who am I to say don't do that? But I would say on the large, like try not to box yourself too early. I think there's quite a lot of beauty to being a generalist or having a general knowledge of different skill sets and areas and the different capabilities and abilities to do different parts of marketing and understand and see how that all works, because you can take a lot of those skills can be applied elsewhere and they're transferable, so it can only make you a better marketer in the long term. So I think that would be my initial advice. What I would also say at the same time, though, is protect your energy. So we all know, the marketing world is super fast moving. It can get pretty hectic and there can be a lot of expectation on you, especially if you're a generalist or you have a wide range of marketing skills. That pressure could become pretty enormous. So it is really important also to protect your energy. People will want you to be, especially when you're first starting out, and if you're in a smaller company or a growing company, businesses will want you to be everything all at once. So they'll want you to be a writer, they'll want you to be a designer, they'll want you to do the marketing strategy, they'll want you to do all the digital marketing and the SEO. And that's where I think a lot of marketers hit that burnout point and they really start to struggle and they lose that kind of love for what they're doing. I see it time and time again. I've experienced it myself. It's a real trap that is very easy to fall in. So it's really important to set boundaries early on, whether that's in a new role, whether it's when you're kind of branching out and learning something new, if it's at a new company, working with someone new, whatever it might be, set those sort of boundaries early. And don't feel like you're saying, setting a boundary isn't the same as saying no to something. And it's not the same as saying, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not helpful. Really have confidence to back yourself and set boundaries around your time and your energy and what you're able to take on. And I would say, thirdly, with that, don't be afraid to ask for help. There's so many times in my career that I put off asking for help and kind of just put a smile on and said, yeah, I can handle it all, throw more on me. I love this stuff. I thrive in chaos. Maybe a small part of me does. Yeah, of course. But I think when the chaos very quickly can spiral out of control, and then it's you're left completely overwhelmed. And again, it's another factor that can contribute to burnout and take you down that path. And you really want to avoid that as much as possible. So ask for help sooner if you feel like something could do with another set of eyes, another pair of hands. Speak up and don't be afraid to ask that, and don't see that as a weakness, because that's actually a strength.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful, Yasmin. Thank you so much for that. I want to make sure that the audience hears that correctly, because you mentioned a few things in there that I think were really interesting. You mentioned that it would be helpful in your long-term career not to get too specific straight away in terms of career, in terms of as Duray as a marketeer or Jess as the new budding marketing manager. Don't get too specific too early, because having that kind of a general skill set means that when you are outsourcing or when you are starting new campaigns in different aspects that maybe you're unfamiliar with, at least you kind of know roughly what SEO looks like, or you know roughly what a good successful traditional PR campaign looks like, or you know roughly what a decent TikTok looks like. Whereas if you were, for example, exclusively a PPC specialist from the ages of 18 to 45, and then all of a sudden someone said, yeah, I need you to also build that TikTok campaign out. You're like, hello. That's a lot, right? So I think that's really good advice. And then you mentioned about boundaries, and you mentioned that a lot of people will ask you to wear so many hats. So I want to be clear that, and I want to make sure that our audience understands that you only have, as a marketer, you only have X amount of hours in a week. And whether you're wearing multiple hats, that's okay, especially at the start of your career. I think saying yes to things is helpful, and I would agree. But as you go through later down the line, and as people will start bringing more and more things to your somehow never-ending to-do list, making sure that you establish priorities with those stakeholders is clear. So I say to my marketing team, I am going to need you to be as much as kind of a jack of all trades here, because we're a small team and I'm willing to pitch in and I'm willing to do my stuff and I'm willing to help out when it's too heavy, but I need communication from you. So I would say things like, I'm going to ask you to do things, but I need you to come back to me and say, okay, DeRay, I'm happy to do a course and a podcast and socials, but just so you know, if we're going to try and get this course done by November, it means that this is my current timeline. So I need to dedicate at least 10 hours a week to this course. As such, I only have 30 hours a week to do the socials, the podcast, and the LinkedIn. Which one of these is the biggest priority for me to do? That to me is like, oh, fantastic, because it means that I can prioritize and at least I have visibility. So I think helping for others, but also making sure that you communicate clearly with your manager and go, Mr. Manager, Mrs. Manager, thank you so much. Yes, I like that opportunity, or yes, I'm able to take that on. I just need to share awareness with you and make sure that you are conscious of the things that I'm currently doing. If I was to add this in, where would it need to be in this list of kind of current priorities? And when do you need this kind of MVP done by, or when do you need it ticked off? Because then it allows for them to go, actually, this can wait, or actually, I think someone else has more capacity. Do you think like those are some good advice that that young people and all people in marketing could benefit from?
Absolutely. And that advice, that never, like you said, that never expires. You can apply that throughout your career. There's a couple of things there I think it's really key not to overpromise and underdeliver. So especially early on in your career, I think this is where a lot of people struggle, is much earlier, when you're kind of just wanting to make a great impression and, you know, be seen as the helpful member of the team who just gets stuck in and, you know, is really behind the brand and, you know, wants to make it all work. It's very easy to kind of fall into that trap early. So you say communication, and I think alignment, team alignment, and this will speak to sort of founders and managers and things, that making sure that you have alignment across your team, also across the other departments, is so important, and that will help that prioritization become so much easier, and it will just improve the efficiency of the whole marketing engine throughout the business. So making sure that you're all aligned on what takes priority, what you want to attack first, and also around, you know, messages. So making sure that you're all speaking the same language throughout the business, make sure leadership is speaking the same language and putting out the same messages as sales, as marketing, as product, you know, customer success, everyone. I think that alignment, you know, throughout is really important.
Amazing. Yasmin, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for being on the Wise Build Bridges. Before you go, for those people who really resonated with you, who want to learn more about North Code, and just maybe want to have a chat with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I think the best place to find me is probably on Instagram. So that is at my North Code. Or you can just search for my name, Yasmin Wilkinson, on LinkedIn, and you'll find everything you need there. I've got a link tree that has like a hub of information. There's a ton of free resources if you did want to start looking at those sort of mindsets or any self-limiting beliefs and kind of unpacking those and seeing how to reframe them into something more empowering. There's a load of free resources on there available to do that. And yeah, if you want to chat, just send me a DM on LinkedIn or Instagram, wherever.
Amazing. Yasmin Wilkinson, thank you so much. I wish you absolutely all the best with North Code. I will be following your progress with a smile. And thanks again for being on the Wise Build Bridges. I think you've got a fantastic message with the world. I want to say kudos for being brave enough to jump on this podcast. I think you've done a fantastic job. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom and your authentically being yourself and helping others get better. That's exactly what we've done at the Wise Build Bridges. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Joe. I was going to say likewise. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
To everyone else that's listening to the Wise Build Bridges, thank you for listening to another episode, and we'll see you at the next one. Bye for now.